Hey YouTube, this is the time that we are preparing to make a tour through Europe from Belgium to actually Croatia, where we will spend a few weeks, and we are preparing to load the car and to leave first to Germany. But I would like to show you how we prepare the trip. You will see it's very easy. Okay, let me plan a trip with a Tesla. So first we have a look on the first screen here. Since we charge it, we have driven 14 kilometers with an average of 119 watt-hours per kilometer consumption. If you divide that number by 10, you get 11.9 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometer. That's easier if you compare with the consumption of a diesel or a fuel car. We express it in Europe usually in liters per 100 kilometer. Now, you see that the average for the last 3,500 kilometers was 135 watt-hours per kilometer. That was in a colder period, and in summertime the consumption is actually a bit lower. Okay, so we have the navigation map here, and I will input the name of the city where we go, and that is Split. Split, Croatia. Okay. And immediately you will see that the planning is done. And these are the superchargers that the car will want to get charged. And we are ready to go. We'll see that the next destination is Namur in Belgium. We are now at 43%. And we will reach Namur with 22%, and there it will be charged to the necessary charge to reach the next one. So we go from supercharger to supercharger. This is the line, the blue line. It indicates that there is no traffic jams, no hindrance on the way, and that we can drive in 1 hour 14 minutes to the next destination. Quite easy, and I'm looking forward to this first experience for a long trip. We are planning more long trips this summer. After the summer, we'll go to the south of Spain and Portugal, and that will be a much longer trip. But first, I'll report later how it went on the way to Croatia. Okay, see you. To start today, I would like to show you a clip from NBC about the importance of FSD for the world. They talk about America, but the same is true in Europe.
Transportation sector is that the number of auto deaths in the United States has gone up during the past 5 to 10 years from 30,000 to 45,000 after decades of falling thanks to auto safety measures. So the National Highway and Transportation Safety Board and other transportation authorities want to turn that trend back down. Why has it happened? A lot of it is because of texting, and therefore a disproportionate number of young people are dying in auto accidents. So the data supports what Tesla is doing. 80 to 90% of all accidents on the roads are caused by human error. If you take the human being out of the equation and use AI to get people from point A to point B as safely as quickly as possible, I think the authorities, the regulators, are going to be persuaded by the data. In fact, they already have been in terms of the fatalities in Tesla's cars. They examine them. They say not Tesla's fault for the most part. And oh, by the way, people driving in Tesla cars are 40% plus safer with autopilot and FSD than in other.
Okay, for Europe, the UNECE, which I explained earlier, has been working on a regulation, and basically that's for the rest of the world. America is excluded, although the United Nations are based in New York. But the regulation that has been written is for Driver Control Assistance Systems, DCAS. And a document is created called GRVA 1807. That document is very detailed and contains a very big number of exceptions and rules. And I have really difficulty to understand how FSD, which is now a fully neural net system without code, can be adapted to such a system. But some hooray.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today we've got some big news because March 6, 2024 is going down in history, at least for us outside of North America, because today, and exactly today, the DCAS regulations have been approved by the WP29. So that is just awesome. Now, if you want to know more about the DCAS regulations, what exactly it is, I put a link up here and down below in the description to another video where I do the full explanation of what it actually means. But in short, this means that we will have the possibility that FSD beta is coming outside of North America. Now remember, this is a UN regulation and not an EU regulation. So countries like Australia and South Africa are also part of it, and also the UK. So even though you guys have the Brexit, you're still bound by this WP29 regulation. Now, what is the timeline that we can expect on this? Well, it can be either September or November, according to my sources, and it will depend on the speed of processing by the New York UN offices. So now the regulation has been approved. It still needs to go through a lot of red tape and paperwork to get it actually into effect. So let's say that we will have to deal with November, the worst case, but if everything goes well, we could be pleasantly surprised and it becomes active as of September 2024. Now, does that mean that we will see Tesla FSD this year? Well, as I mentioned in the other video, many changes have to be made to get it ready for Europe and other countries outside of North America. There are many specific regulations, and especially like in Europe, we have each country has...
And yes, there are other stakeholders in Europe, like Mr. Green, which is a very big organization leasing cars to people. They are making a robotaxi network, and I will let you hear some explanation by them.
We have Florian Minderop, who I cannot vouch for at all. He's the co-founder and CEO of Mr. Green EV, building a Tesla FSD autonomous fleet. He said, breaking news, FSD is coming to Europe in 2025. The new regulation is adopted. I'll keep you posted when we have more information. I went to the website to click around. We did mention last week this meeting was coming up. It's being held from March 5th to March 8th. He did clarify in the comments, yes, FSD beta. I can't confirm it right now, but this certainly could be legit. You may remember last week we said at this meeting they're discussing some pretty important legislation for FSD's future in Europe. By this post, maybe things went very well. According to the regulatory body, Tesla will have to submit an outline of the system's design for approval. According to Teslascope, a launch could come as soon as October in some European countries. Once it's released, Tesla will have to provide updates to regulators at least once per year. It should be clear this new regulation does not cover fully autonomous driving. It still requires the driver to remain engaged and responsible for the car at all times. The regulation that was reportedly adopted establishes a standardized framework for systems that support a combination of driving control assistance features like braking, accelerating, and overtaking, not just cruise control. Hopefully toward the end of this week we get something official, and I would have to add here, just because Tesla gets the green light and they're approved to launch FSD beta there does not mean they're going to rush at the opportunity right away. I still think they want to get version 12 right in the United States before they start focusing on too many global markets. If this turns out to be true, and whenever Tesla decides to launch FSD there, that of course will mean exciting times for the global take rate of Tesla's FSD, especially if it's version 12.
Well, something changed in August 2023. Tesla FSD changed completely from a programmed logic to a fully AI system, and it's now called a system with vision in through neural nets, controls out. Here's an interview with Dave Lee and James Dama, one of the most interesting persons in this field.
Was it like moderate, or was it super excited, or was it just?
It's really exciting. It's association from how I was expecting the program to evolve over the next year or two. We fall into these traps where you see things sort of proceeding in a certain way, and you kind of expect that to continue. And this, pulling the last bits of code out, and no small amount of code. They talked about 300,000 lines of C. Like pulling that out, replacing it with a neural network. It's a really significant step forward, kind of functionally, in terms of like what you can do with the system and how you train the system. But it's also a point I was, they were always going to get here. Like it was always going to be end to end at some point. It just is. But there are parts of the process that are easier and parts that are harder. And there are parts that you have to build first before you build other parts and that kind of stuff. So, it was always going to be, the first people to succeed at this were going to be people who started building modules, put the modules together, and then gradually sort of converted more and more of the modules over to code. Essentially, what Karpathy was talking about in his Software 2.0 idea. And that's what we've seen them doing. And on the trajectory that they were on, we saw them, do all the perception and get that in a neural network and have all the planning, pretty much all the planning in code and whatnot, and then gradually adding neural networks to enhance these later functions, planning and later control. And I was really surprised to find that, in one sort of step, because I was expecting this to take another year or two or something like that. But like in one step, it was just like they were able to like take all the remaining heuristic code and drop in a neural network trained in a particular fashion. And because that's the last, that was the last non-neural network block that was significant in the control path, now you can do end-to-end, because once it's a neural network from the input to the output, you can back propagate, you can train through the whole thing as a single unit. So that, like, it has a lot of really interesting possibilities for the future. And they wouldn't have made this change if it wasn't a significant improvement, because it would have been safer to keep doing the other thing. So we know, we heard from some of these book excerpts right now a little bit about the timeline. It wasn't that long ago that you can bet that they were looking at various approaches to doing end-to-end, like throughout this program. Because once you can get it working, it simplifies a bunch of things. It's a big lever on a lot of different kinds of making, a lot of different ways of making the program move forward faster. And so, just like a lot of other entities that have looked at end-to-end or whatnot, you have to get a certain amount of traction on the problem before it starts to be practical to try doing that. And so about a year ago, it seems like they had a new approach for dropping in the last block, and they took a look at it and they thought it was promising, and then they did a significant amount of work on it. It sounds like they worked on it for about 4 months, including a significant amount of data development and testing and that kind of stuff. And at the end of 4 months, they were getting good enough results. And that was like last April, that they felt like that, well, at least, you know, the anecdote is that Elon decided to like shift the resources and focus on that as a primary path.
Okay, so let's dive in.
Yes, I'll really recommend you to watch for more videos about FSD if you are interested in the details, in the technical workings of FSD. James Dauma has a lot of experience and is completely involved in this field. He knows exactly how things work, and he knows that Tesla is really leading the whole pack here. He explained that all the others are still working with heuristic code, that means classical programs, while Tesla is the only company who completely switched from a vision in, actions out system and neural nets in the middle. You can see here Cruise, Waymo, NVIDIA, Mobileye. They are all still in an earlier phase, and Tesla has moved on to the upper right-hand quadrant, where cameras and end-to-end neural nets are used. Just a few days after this new regulation was introduced, Rohan Patel, who is a top executive at Tesla, he reacted to this regulation, saying that a complete change in mentality should happen at UNECE.
Unfortunately, we have Rohan Patel throwing some cold water on FSD, at least in its full form, making its way to Europe on the timeline many were hoping for. Even after the most recent DCAS update, Rohan said the current regulations don't allow for these system-initiated maneuvers, which are the hallmark of FSD. More still needs to change at the UN in order to allow for the full safety benefits of FSD. When Rohan says the UN, he's referring to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Today, Rohan said the updated DCAS regs are encouraging, but they won't go into effect until around November and don't address the key issue, system-initiated maneuvers, in order to enable the full benefits of FSD. He said a mindset change is needed for regulators, no surprise. He added Japan is quite forward-leaning, and that the definition of what can be considered an advanced driver function must also change. The most exciting technology advancements in transportation will take place outside of the great nations that adhere to those UN standards. He said Tesla could make some small improvements given the new regulations by the end of this year, but unless there's an updated allowance for those system-initiated maneuvers, the full benefits are not type approvable. With the latest regulation, the driver would need to approve of almost every significant maneuver. There will be more on this soon, but generally speaking, we need more support from a wider set of leaders. This is far more than a road transportation issue. By the way, this is also very true in the US also. As it stands right now, anything that FSD itself would initiate or decide to do on its own, something as simple as a lane change, is not going to fly under these UN regulations. Not great news for many European countries. Sounds like FSD in its full version won't make its way to those countries until sometime in 2025 at the very earliest. More importantly, we still need another regulatory change for FSD to operate in those. One other thing to keep in mind when it comes to FSD rolling out globally, we have Keys on X, who is one of the policy experts. He's dug into the details when it comes to the EU regulation. He's also part of the team building the Mr. Green EV robo fleet. He shared some doubts about FSD beta in Europe, especially the assertive multi-lane changes and path planning we see V12 performing in the States. Especially the system-initiated maneuvers, which make beta great, are still restricted in the current DCAS legislation. The easiest way to think about this, with past versions where there was code, Tesla may have had more flexibility for not allowing certain features, but with version 12, how are you going to do that if there's really no heuristic code to select?
Anything. Did you see the gate in your shot?
I love this. This is amazing. Even squeezed in here between these two cars. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tesla Fix. Today we want to talk about a topic that's due for a long time, in my opinion, because FSD in Europe still did not arrive, and also the updates, the software updates from Tesla, are a little bit slower in the European area than in the US, of course, especially with the FSD features. So we here are desperately waiting on FSD, but now there is legislation kind of in place to get this thing rolling. So this is big news for FSD, and I can't wait to have it here. But for talking about this topic, I have a very special person from Amsterdam. So let's see who it is.
Welcome to Tesla Fix. Make sure to subscribe and like this episode.
So here's Florian Minderop from Mr. Green again. He was on my channel, and yeah, Florian, thank you very much for being here. And yeah, say hello to my audience, and then we can start the episode.
Oh, hi Ian, how are you doing? Nice to meet you again, and I'm very happy to have a talk with you about this amazing news about FSD. So let's go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah. So it catched us kind of by surprise. I think you, as Mr. Green, because your business model also is speculating on the FSD release, and you will have a lot of upside when this happens, because as we talked about in the last episodes, you want to have a robotaxi fleet, the largest robotaxi fleet in Europe, if possible. So you actually don't sell your EVs, you take them back, and those who have hardware 2.5, we've discussed that in the last episode, and I think it's such a great idea. And of course, this news, you were waiting for this, and you've tracked this, of course, pretty thoroughly. So also a worker of yours that is the FSD expert in your ranks also tweeted this, and yeah, I'm gonna maybe read it first and then we can just talk about it. He said that as per today, March 6th of 2024, the DCAS regulation has been approved by the UNECE. And the other thing, the EP-29, I think is the statute that they were discussing. So this is just the code where to find it. And yeah, what does this mean actually? And how far are we with regulations in that term? Because I think they discussed those kinds of topics pretty long. Some things are from 1997 or something already. So they are discussing these kinds of topics pretty long now. So what does this news mean?
Yeah, so Kees is our expert, so he really knows. He dug deep into all those documents. I eventually said, well, maybe we should make a bot, and we feed them with all the documents, and then people can just ask those questions to the bot. But yeah, it's a regulatory item which, in very short terms, we will have FSD on the roads in Europe, as long as Tesla is going to go further with that. So this is very good news for us. I mean, it's something that we've been waiting for a few years already. I mean, there's already FSD available on the European market, but it's not the FSD that we know of the videos out of the US. So it's nothing compared. It's the first tech, yeah, the biggest problem was that regulation was not in place. So we followed this UN department, the UNECE, where they had conversations with a lot of experts, and they finally made a decision. So, and the decision right now is that as of beginning of 2025, we will see autonomous cars on the roads in Europe, and if we're lucky, even by October already.
That's so interesting, because you've predicted last time, when we talked about this topic as well, or a bigger interview when I've visited you, that you kind of expected, because it was pushed a little bit, and we've heard, yeah, FSD release and stuff, you actually predicted that the end of 2024, beginning 2025 might come something, or even the end of 2025. So this kind of aligns with that. That's pretty good. So you're right on the money with that. And yeah, what implication does this have on our market? I mean, maybe you can tell the audience how our legislation system actually in Europe works, because in the US it's kind of a little bit different, right? They can deploy something, they can test something, and then the regulator step in actually afterwards, kind of. And here, yeah, how is it? I mean, as we know, we have to really do a lot of talking with the regulators to get something going like this. But yeah, so maybe that's, you can explain a little bit why this is so important, such a decision by the UNECE. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Elon talked about it as well, that in the United States everything is possible by law. There is not like
or legal by default. Yeah, he said legal by default.
By default, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for. And along the way, NHTSA, which is the regulatory framework in the United States, is able to actually have, with the feedback they get, they can jump into it.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's the other way around. If we have the legal framework in place, then that's it, and then everybody has to comply to that framework. So you could maybe you could say that Europe will have an advantage as of that moment, because then everything's already in place.
That's true.
That's something that Case also says a lot, that then we are a little bit ahead, because then we already everybody has been thinking about it, and it is already deployed, and there's nothing to be changed. So
that's true.
We will have to see how this works out, because I have no idea. We have to see how it works out, how FSD will eventually be regulated. I mean, I can imagine if you have a lot of code that you can say, okay, this part of the code, we don't want that to be deployed. But with V12, where there's no code, how are you going to manage that? So for me, that's still also a question mark.
Yes, but the UNECE story is continuing. Just a few days ago, we saw the agenda for the next meetings, and very exciting. The next event will be in Troy, Michigan, in the United States, and guess what? They will do a test drive with a Tesla FSD version 12. And then in June, there will be a next meeting to discuss what they learned there and to include partially the system-initiated maneuvers, exactly what is necessary to allow FSD in the future. Very exciting.
Entire annual capital expenditures have only been between $5 and $10 billion for the past few years. Over the past decade, Tesla has proven itself as a hyper-efficient deployer of capital, so given that Tesla is now deciding to spend this much on AI infrastructure, should tell us everything we need to know. They're already seeing significant returns on investment with more compute, with more data, with more vehicles having FSD. And in case you missed it last week, Tesla was demoing FSD to the Swedish Transport Administration in Germany, aka the first time FSD was used on European roads. A rep from the transport agency said impressive, smooth, and natural driving. In Europe, there are still questions about these new DCAS regulations. They won't go into effect until November, and they still don't address the key issue of system-initiated maneuvers, meaning Tesla's FSD could be nerfed to some degree across Europe unless things change as they stand now. But a good step one in getting those regulators to change their minds would be allowing them to experience version 12. Replying to Holmars, Elon did say, "We believe version 12 is ready for supervised FSD in left-hand drive countries. Right-hand drive will take a bit longer." As you can see from this map, most of the world in green actually operates in left-hand drive markets. Ray for Tesla said the co-founder and vice chair of Xiaomi actually traveled to the United States just to test Tesla's FSD12. The TLDR, he said he was very impressed. On X, Zach said his 2019 Model 3 with ultrasonic sensors got the new auto park and visualizations with FSD version 12.3.6. So yes, .6 is rolling out to customers, but as Elon said last week, these 3 releases are minor updates. The big one will be 12.4.